Welcome to the Greatness Garage Podcast, the place where small businesses get big answers. I'm your host, Brad Borkhuis, founder of Epitome Coaching and Consulting, and this is the Greatness Garage. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Greatness Garage. We're so happy you're here to join us. We have got David Handler here today with just an amazing, unique sports and media background and just a way to help people in such amazing ways. And so, David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome, Brad. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be a part of this in the garage.
Yeah. So, David, introduce yourself and tell the garage a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, let's go in reverse order. So I am the managing principal of a group of coaches in executive coaching called LAH Insight. I have my own coaching practice, and next month will be the end of 22 years, and it's called Success Handler, kind of a play on my last name. I knew the name of the company before I even knew what it was going to be, interestingly enough. And then if we go in reverse order, I came out of the franchising industry most recently. I was senior VP of a international franchising company with about 1,000 locations. Prior to that, was co-founder and co-owner of a sports travel company. Today, it is the largest in the world. And on the weekend of zero college football, some people may be aware of the Aer Lingus Classic in Ireland. We started that game in 1986. And
Wow.
my business partner, John Anthony of Anthony Travel, is over there right now, hobnobbing with all the big, important people in college football. And
That's
then my
awesome.
first career, my wife says after three, I could only get one more, so I kind of stuck in coaching. But my first career was 15 years in sports television, starting at a local TV station and working my way up to doing sports production, the producer, the guys in the truck for some of the major networks. And I did over 1,000 live events in sports television.
Oh, and that's sports. My brother was in a little bit of sports media, and it's a grind. Like you guys, people think like one game a week. No, it's game after game and travel after travel, and it's a grind. Wow,
Yeah. One
that's
reason I got out
awesome.
of it was we had young children, and the last year I was in television, 1995, I spent 36 weekends on the road, and I decided there was more to
Yep,
life than that.
yep. That's a sign. Yep. So, oh well, awesome. Well, I can't wait to jump into this. It's gonna be so fun. So, our first segment is I wish I would have. I wish I would have done more. I wish I would have done less. So David, take it away.
Yeah, I started to tell you the story about 1983 when my best friend since eighth grade, we were a year or two out of college. He was a CPA. He had become a stockbroker. And I was making my first IRA contribution, so $2,000. And I was making in 1983 probably $14,000 a year. But I'd saved money. I lived at home and I wanted to contribute to an IRA. And my buddy said, David, I got stock that you should buy. I want you to buy it, forget about it. And when you're 65, which is what I am today, you will appreciate it. And I said, great. Do I get like 100 shares because I never bought a stock in my life? He said, no, you get two shares. And I said, Chris, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to risk my whole savings of my life in two shares. So the stock was $1,000 a share then. If I had listened to him and bought it, today it'd be worth $1.465 million. It was Berkshire Hathaway Class A stock. Yeah, but I didn't. So I'm still working. The second story I was going to tell, I used to be a big horse racing fan, and there's a racetrack, as you know, not far from us in Houston.
Yep.
And I would go there with my buddies on the Kentucky Derby and the Triple Crowns, and we'd just be at the races all day having fun and betting on the races. And we'd always bet the race just before the Kentucky Derby, place our bets on the Kentucky Derby, drive home and watch it on TV. Okay. So in 2008, there was a horse named Big Brown, and I had gotten pretty good over the years at reading the racing form, and I decided, okay, I'll put 20 bucks on Big Brown, but I think I'm going to do a superfecta. And a superfecta, I think the wheel of it, which is you kind of include all the horses, was $24 for a
Mm.
50-cent superfecta. Okay. So I'm in line. There's three people in front of me. I wait. I'm talking myself out of it. I get to the front of the line, and I say $20 on Big Brown, and I chicken out on the $24 bet for the superfecta. Well, I get home, I'm watching the race with my family, and Big Brown runs away with it. The next day, I get out either online or we were getting a paper then, and I read the paper. I said, I wonder what that superfecta turned out. $58,000, and I had it. So those are the two stories I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh my God.
But now I'll tell you the one that was I wish I would have. I did, and then I didn't. So
Cool.
in 1988, I had a dream. I went to the University of Texas, and I despised Notre Dame because they took away two national championships from us when I was a kid. But I had a dream. How do people get to Notre Dame football games? I don't know why. I think it was divine intervention. And it was in October of '88. Notre Dame was like 6-0 or 7-0 at that point
Hmm.
in the season. And I called my best friend, the aforementioned John Anthony, and I said, John, I had this dream last night. What do you think it means? And John was on a partner track at Ernst& Young accounting, tax.
Hmm.
And he said, I think it means we should meet for lunch today. So just so we could tell the story, we got out a napkin and wrote out, a couple of drawings on it, which we still have.
Yeah.
Said, okay, here's our business plan for
Cool.
becoming Notre Dame's travel company. And what we did is we actually bought Notre Dame wound up going undefeated. And the day
Yep.
they
Yep.
announced that they were going to play in whatever bowl game it was, we bought, I think it was in Arizona, we bought tickets from the major airlines through another travel agent from the big Notre Dame cities, Boston, Chicago, LA, etc., Dallas. And that was December 6th, I think, and we had like 4 days to sell or turn them in. It was a different world in those days. So what
Wow.
we did is we knew people at Notre Dame, and we talked to some kids there and said, would you start knocking on dorm doors and giving them our flyer we created overnight? And sure enough, we sold out our whole allotment in those 3 days. And
Wow.
we used that as seed money. And in July 15th of 1989, we opened a travel company on McKinney Avenue in Dallas. And
That
John
is so cool.
dropped it. He left Ernst& Young. I kept
Yeah.
doing television. Well, I remember we put desks together. There were three desks, and we put them together. I don't know if they were from IKEA or whatever, by hand. We really bootstrapped it. I took six bids from six phone companies on a five-line phone system to get the cheapest price.
Yeah.
John worked through the night endless times. He worked so hard while I was out playing television. And in January, a year and a half later, we opened on Notre Dame's campus.
Wow.
To this day, he's still on Notre Dame's campus,
Hmm.
and he is embedded in 100 university athletic departments. I just saw a picture, he has over 400 employees just on the university side. He's turned it twice. He's still the CEO. This is a
Wow.
great story. In 1995, after all those weeks away from home, I was looking for an office job in television, and it took me 6 months to find an offer. I got an offer from ESPN to move to Bristol. And I called John and said, hey, man, I finally got an offer. I think I'm going to take it. He goes, I've been waiting for 6 months to ask you this. Would you come to work with me? I said, what? I said, why didn't you ask me this 6 months ago? He said,
Yep. Yep.
because I wanted you to have another option.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it was a Friday. I told him, give me till Monday. On Monday, I went out and mowed the yard, came in. I told my wife I'd made my decision. She said, I'll pack our bags. I said, I want to go to work with John. So him living in South Bend, me in Dallas, we had an office of about 8 people at the time. And so I started working in our Dallas office. There were 14 total people in our company. I grew it with him to 42 people. We had Disney's Wide World of Sports, which today is ESPN's Wide
Yeah.
World of Sports. And we were taking people everywhere. And the last year at the travel company, 1998, I was away from home 3 months. And once again, I was, what is this life? John lives
Hmm.
a mile from Notre Dame's campus, and I'm traveling all over. So I went to him. I said, John, I think it's time that I went and found something else to do. And he said, well, let's do this. Keep your shares and go get another job. I said, let's just call it a clean break. So he said, okay. So he wrote down a number. I wrote down a number. We traded the sheet of paper, and he goes, you want to meet in the middle? I said, sure. So he bought me out. We were equal partners. He bought me out. And well, I didn't mention, yes, he's still in South Bend, Indiana, but he also has a home in Naples, Florida. And as you know, I live in Tomball, Texas.
Yeah.
So I guess the moral of these three stories is right when the golden ring is there,
Yep.
something over my history and my personality that just causes me to hesitate. And that's kind of the I wish I would have. I wish I would have not hesitated in
Yep.
these three instances.
It's such a I love it because it's a story about just opportunities, but it's a story about our own risk profiles. And there is a thing of just really kind of understanding that there is a pathway for us. And if we want that pathway, a lot of times people, so, it must be nice, it must be nice. But on that pathway, there's some risk profiles that some people want are just more natural. You look at some of these entrepreneurs that have done very successful, and you see a lot in real estate as well. The risk, oh, I get sick. The risk that they are comfortable with is phenomenal. And I think there is a lesson in what you're saying is that we have to become more comfortable with risk. There's a point to where we have to assess where that's way too risky, but at the same time, when those opportunities show up. So let me ask this question. Did your gut say no and you went with it, or did your gut say yes and you went against it?
It's funny you mentioned my gut because I have some gut issues anyway, health wise. So maybe my gut speaks louder than most. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that what's really happening there is it's a lack of confidence, perhaps. I kind of know
Yep.
the right thing. So maybe my gut speaks well, my heart speaks well. I don't know why I had a dream about Notre Dame football, but I know it was something that seemed right. And then my
Yeah.
brain takes over. And as you know, because we're coaches, we're training these things as behavioral scientists have proven, a loss for some people is twice as painful as a win. And so
Yep.
I think
Yep.
the fear of losing is something that's very prevalent in my life. It's funny
Yeah.
because in sports, I'm a swimmer and I play golf by myself. So clearly, competing with others is not something that is a forefront for me.
Yep. Yep.
My second oldest brother spent 40 years as a Wall Street analyst, and he's the kind of guy that, on the golf course will say, "I'll give you $5 if you make that putt." And I'm shaking over that. And to him, it's just fun and games, but to me, it's like,
Yep.
cut that. I'm here to score. And so there is definitely something going on there, Brad, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think that ability for us sometimes to know ourselves and know that stuff's going to show up kind of prepares us in a way to say, if I take on this opportunity and this risk, it's going to show. Well, and it's interesting too, those of us that enjoy the analytics of the problem, right? Sometimes we get that paralysis of analysis and we get stuck in that thought. And like you said about even in the horse race, you thought yourself out of it. What your gut said go. And yeah, and it's just but it's interesting. My dad wasn't a hoarder, but he collected the cars and all kinds of wood, right? All two by fours. We had all kinds of wood and stuff like that too. And you look at us, even as the older we get, why do we hold on to those things? And we hold on to them because that one time, like as you mentioned, they regret loss twice as much as that one time that I wish I would have had that tube that would have been perfect for what the job I was doing. And now we have 15 tubes that will never be used.
That's good. Yeah, you mentioned your dad. It's funny because my dad, he was in the class of 1942. So in December of 41, when Pearl Harbor happened,
Yeah.
Nashua, Wisconsin, the whole senior boys class, which I think was like 14 people, they all enlisted in the military right after that. So my
Wow.
dad went in the Navy, and who knows how it's going to play out. Well, he wound up, and he was kind of embarrassed by it a little bit, but he wound up being in the Galapagos Islands and Panama during World War II. And as I jokingly told my friends, hey, no people got through that Panama Canal. But I think my dad spent his naval years playing gin rummy and golf in
God.
Panama. And so when he started a business, very successful furniture store in Fort Worth, he did not play golf until he was in his late 50s. But he would always play golf 2 days a week, work half a day, go play golf, and then play gin rummy for 1 hour. And he really thrived on that competition. I'd see scorecards and there'd, be $1 here and 50 cents there. And some people are just cut out that way.
Yep.
And it's never been my personality. So it's not even something we inherit. I think it's truly an individual thing. And
Yep.
genes play as big a part in it as my brother and my dad proved.
Yep. Well, and it's funny. So I had this really beautiful experience growing up where I had two parents that ran a business together. And my dad had that risk profile. Like he would, it was a candy business, so candy and food service and stuff like that. And he would buy these lots of, special candies that somebody Brock's or somebody was coming out with. And he would say, I think I can do something with it, not knowing for sure. And he would run with it. And my mom was on the finance side and the accounting side. And it's interesting in the business that we ran, in the distribution business, margins are razor thin. And so, as the business grew, it actually became more of a burden psychologically on us because when you have a business that's 20 million or whatever, when you miss by a percent, you could lose $250,000 that year. And so it was really stressful. So I think part of that showed up for myself and my is you aim small, miss small, and analyze it because if you didn't analyze or you missed that one thing, it could cost the entire year. So
It's interesting
yeah.
that you and I both share parents who had a business, and here we are, entrepreneurs with a business. There
We
is
didn't
something,
learn
I
a
guess,
lot.
to the genes in that part.
Yeah, or you know what I think too? I think there's a part that's interesting. I went to college for business and I went and started a business and never even thought of it. Like never thought like, oh, just to me when I was young, that's what I want to do. That I was so like, yep, that's what I want. And I think there's a part to where we see, like for me, I saw the ability to uh, to take the reins and be in control a little bit of your own destiny. And I really kind of like that opportunity that I was going to be evaluated on my own efforts, on my own, medal and that stuff. And that felt really good. And then, there's interesting too that the freedom. You saw that my parents or my dad could, take a trip and they could go do something here and there. And they had that, like you said, they could take the afternoon off because if they worked hard enough in the morning and did it, they could make it work out in the other way. So yeah.
Great story.
Oh, that's awesome. So I love how that really just started. So thank you for that insight and just the way that we understand risk in another beautiful way that we can kind of see it from a evaluative standpoint in a lens that looks at that. So the next segment, I love this, is you aren't gonna believe this, and I know you're gonna bring some stories up, and I am just let me get my coffee, and I am ready. David, take it away.
Yeah, well, so I thought a bunch of stories, but I'll just stick to one here.
I love it.
So think about my career in television. I started a local station. There was a company that today I think is called Prime Sports, but it was called Home Sports Entertainment in Houston and Dallas. I was part of the group that brought them on the air in Dallas in 1983. And by the way, I should mention this, Brad. I actually dropped out of college after my junior year. So
Wow.
I was 18 hours from graduating and I got a job offer. I had been an intern in Austin at what I called the worst television station in Texas, where I literally started sweeping the floors. But I taught myself how to edit what was then 3/4 inch videotape. So the
Oh
left
yeah.
machine would back up, the right machine would back up, you'd hear this, and then they'd match edits. And so here I am 20 years old and I know how to edit. Well, I got an internship in Dallas at KDFW TV Channel 4, summer of 1981, June 9th, by the way. I know the date exactly. And there were 12 interns that summer, and some of them went on to some pretty nice television careers. But here I am, this guy who has no talent in front of the camera. And so the news director is going around the room asking each one, what is your dream? What do you want to be? Finally, after about the eighth person, he gets to me and he says, David, what do you want to be? I said, I want to work in sports, but that you didn't offer a sports internship, so here I am. And he said, excuse me, got up and walked me across this wide open newsroom where you could see all the reporters in the background to the sports director, a guy named Dale Hansen, who became kind of well known for his liberal
Yeah.
sports. And he said, Bill, can you find something for this kid to do the next 8 weeks? And Dale said, yeah, but I'm leaving today, so I'll be back in a few days. The next day, the baseball players went on strike in 81. So Dale leaves. So I'm sitting there like this for 3 days going, well, I don't know what I do, but maybe it'll work out. Well, Dale starts giving me more and more to do. And it's literally the last day of my internship. I'm going to school the next day for my senior year, needing 18 hours to graduate. And Dale says, I want to offer you a job. I said, this is great. I graduate on May 12th. He said, the job won't be here on May 12th.
Wow.
And Dale got in the car after our 6 o'clock newscast, drove to my house in Fort Worth, and talked to my parents and said, I promise you he'll get his degree, but this is a job that he won't have a year from now. So I go to Austin the next day and I meet with the dean of students of the journalism school with a letter from Channel 4 for my $5.05 an hour new job. And I say, I don't know what to do here. And the dean looked me in the eye and he said, we're here to get kids jobs. And he signed off on it. And he said, you can come back anytime and finish your last 6 hours of journalism, and you can take the other 12 hours at UTA in Arlington.
Yeah.
So I did. I did not get my degree for 3 more years. Okay, back to the story.
Wow.
So I get back from my getting my degree, and this is how life plays out. That summer of '84, after I got my degree, the Supreme Court ruled in the NCAA case, allowing the colleges to take away the NCAA football television contract. And it overnight it opened up what we now have today is all these things. But in my day, when I
Yeah.
was young, there was only the NCAA game of the week with Keith Jackson on, one game, and maybe if you were lucky, your team was on twice a year. Well, that opened it up, and a company out of North Carolina named Raycom Sports had been doing tape delay Clemson football, and they got the contract for the Southwest Conference. Now, I don't know any of this is happening, but in August of '84, I get a call from a guy named Don McGuire, and he says, hey, I'm looking for an associate producer for our new Southwest Conference football package. And he said, I'd like to interview you. Yeah, sure. So I've just gotten back from a 6 week leave of absence. I've been there a
Yeah.
month. Don interviews me at a restaurant on I-30 in Arlington. And he says, well, I'm interviewing one other person. I'll let you know whatever tomorrow. The next day he calls and offers me the job. So I was making 14,000 at that time. This job was going to pay me 18,000 for basically half a year's work. And I'm thinking, I'm going to make a lot of money out of this, right?
Yeah.
And so I asked him, Don, yes, I take the job. Why did you pick me over the other guy? This is how strange life is. And he says, the other guy didn't show up for the interview. So I got the job. You're never going to believe this because the other guy, and I know the guy we're really still in television in Dallas Fort, but he missed the interview. And so Don offered me.
Wow.
So Don became my mentor. I started off in the booth literally doing this for announcers. 4, 3, 2, you're back. Handing them cards. We'll be back after this message from all this stuff. Learning how to do live television sports. And 3 years later, Don left and started TNT Sports, which is big today.
Hmm.
He
Hmm.
later started the Golf Channel, and I kept doing television. Finally, the whole point of the story. I'm 27 years old. I looked like I was 12. I always wore a suit and tie to at least make me look 15. And I'm now producing my first few Southwest Conference football games in the lead chair. So I've worked my way from the
Wow.
booth to the truck to the chair. And we would always have a follow-up conference call on Monday from the broadcast on Saturday. And to my right, when you're in a truck, everybody's on headsets. I'm talking to the announcers, the directors next to me. I'm talking to the videotape guys, the graphics guys. And the phone next is the executive producer. And when that phone rings, everybody knows something's up. And for my first 3 games, you mother, he would shout. This is not Don. This is another executive producer, Peter. And I mean, I couldn't do anything right. And so
Yeah.
after the second one, I thought, went to my wife and I said, I think I'm going to fail at this. And she said, no, just keep trying. But I thought maybe he's just playing with me. He's trying to beat me
Yeah.
up. He's been the guy in the lead chair for 2 years who taught me after Don left.
Yeah.
And no, he was mad at me. And on the conference calls on Monday, he let me have it. So this is 1989, I think. And no, 88. And so our announcer was a former Oakland Raider defensive tackle, won the Super Bowl with him in 1980 or 81, whenever that was. And his name was Dave Rowe. Dave's still around
Oh
today.
yeah. Yeah.
86. Dave is 6'7", had 14 surgeries during an NFL career.
Oh.
Yeah. And so Dave pulls me aside and he says, kid, direct quote, kid, you're like a quarterback who's afraid to throw an interception.
Mm.
You'll never throw an interception, a touchdown, until you quit worrying about throwing an interception. I went home and told Kathy that, and she said, why don't you just do your show and quit worrying about Peter?
Yeah.
Never did that phone ring again in the
Huh.
next 7 years I was sitting in that chair because I quit worrying about how I was
Yeah.
supposed to do television, how Peter would do television, how Don did.
Yeah.
Don was taught by Don Ohlmeyer, who was taught by Roone Arledge back to the first days of sports television. And I just
Wow.
said, the heck with it, I'm going to do David Handler television. And
Yeah.
so I wish I had gotten there sooner. But Dave Rowe, and I have shared that advice with some of my coaching clients over the years. I actually
Hmm.
did a graphic of Dave Rowe in the booth and telling the story because it means so much to me that if he
Yeah.
had not pulled me aside and cared enough, I would have probably kept doing what I thought others need to do. And
Yeah.
that changed.
Wow, what an inflection point on your life. Not much just maybe your career, but yeah, what a way to and we get those blessing nuggets that come out that and you know what? And while you may have not have taken the other risks, thank God you had that wherewithal to listen to that one and take it to heart. And again, look at the risk that goes there though. You had to kind of say, piss off. Like I'm gonna do it the way that I know to do it and trust myself. And that's a risk in itself, huh? You know?
Yeah, for a guy obviously who doesn't like taking risks.
Right,
It's
right.
interesting. When I started coaching, I got some advice to start a newsletter. So this is, let's say by the time I started, it was January of 2004. And so my first newsletter, I think it went out to 12 people. It was text only. It was friends and family. And so what did I do? Well, you know what I did. I wrote what I thought I was supposed to write.
Yep,
And
yep,
I did that for about a year. I grew it to about 100 people, and no one responded. So I'm
yep.
talking to Kathy. We've been married 35 years, so she gets a lot of my stories. I'm talking to her, and she says, "Why do you always write what you think others want you to write? Write what you
Yeah,
write. Write, be you. You're a
yeah,
journalist. Write your own." So I started writing what David wanted. I created it. Then I turned it into an email, from an email network type thing that was looked good, had graphics,
yep.
and so I had three columns: lead story, sidebar, and oh, by the way. And somehow I would sit here this is true. I did 168 issues of that newsletter.
Wow.
Then I started blogging. But with that, it was always the third Tuesday of the month at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
I would sit here and my family knew Saturday or Sunday morning, depending on the young kids then stuff. I would
Yeah.
sit here at 6 a.m. I would start writing with no idea what I'm going to write about. I would
Yeah.
just literally do a mind map of what's on my mind today. Oh, let's write about this. And it would just flow. It would just
Yeah.
flow. And it would take 6 hours. I would send it to my brother, third brother, who would read it, proof it. I'd show it to my wife, she'd proof it. And in 6 hours, it was done and ready to go. Never missed that 9 a.m. Tuesday deadline.
That's
Well,
cool.
about 6 months in, my newsletter list was growing. People were sharing it. It wound up being about 2,000 people. And I would
Wow.
get about 20 people a month send me an email saying, I learned so much from your newsletter. That was a great story. I'm going to use this. And the whole change was I quit saying, screw it. I don't care what it is. I'm going to write what I want.
Yep.
So picture
Yep.
this for my 60th birthday in June of 2020. And you know what was happening in June of 2020?
Hmm.
I published a book called Words Flow Through Me.
Yes. Yep.
And that, yep, and that is specifically the truth. Once I quit worrying about what do I need to write, I just let the words flow. It all came together.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah, you know what I love about that is there's this identification of risk, but then there's this common the thread through a faith. And when you sit to write, like I know because for years ago I did a weekly blog or kind of newsletter, and it is too like if you tried to say, okay, what do I need to tell them versus just good Lord, just kind of work through me and tell me what I need to let it flow and let it come in and just be present with the stuff that is and that is on your heart. And I think I teach even people that are trying to do content nowadays. There's so much content out there that is in the same type of grind it harder or 10x it easy. It's all you got to do is this three simple rules, but then being content there that just says like this, it's tough, it's honest, it's difficult, and just to be in conversation with the people that you want to speak to. So yeah.
I think my favorite
Mhm.
writer has always, on the nonfiction side, has always been Seth Godin, the marketing guru.
Oh, yes.
And
Yep.
his whole "let's make a ruckus and just be yourself." He publishes a short blog every day. I get it in my inbox every morning. First thing I read. He's really good at it. And one thing that I think he's always focused on is your smallest viable audience.
Yep.
You don't need to have 1 million people. You need a
Yep.
thousand in his word. At a
Yep.
thousand, you can scale where you can do what you need to do. And when I started this coaching program, I had, let me count, 0 clients. And so,
Yep. Yep.
I
Yep.
was blessed. Some things, I could tell you more stories about how God or whatever one's belief system is gifted me with just things happening that led to what is today. The
Yep.
most important thing, though, was I just kept trying to talk to one more person. Just talk
Yep.
to one more person. And
Yep.
that leads to people wanting to talk to each other and to you. And still today, I have a very tight practice. Our coaching group is a very tight group, but we
Yep.
have enough connections through our 6 degrees of separation that it just seems to work.
Yep. And you can just support each other. And it's funny of all these different tactics and things that we use in social medias and all the advancements, it comes back to this really beautiful connection and supporting each other. And that goes with our clients as well with the people we work with. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, that was awesome. That was so good. So the final segment is, and I love this one, is it's the alignment lane, the aligned language that you use, whether it be a quote or it could be a mantra or it could be a statement or a way that you've used language to really help kind of support you in your success and what's worked for you. So what do you got?
So I'm of the generation that grew up watching Saturday Night Live, and I
Hmm.
started to say, well, let's go with Steve Martin's quote: "Always, no wait, never." That always just set my
Yes.
mind, which is,
Yes.
but I'm going to use the quote back to television. So our director, the first few years I did television, is a guy named Lonnie Dale. And Lonnie wore three-piece Armani suits. Lonnie had the most beautiful coiffed hair. And Lonnie would say, "Ready, camera one, take camera one. Ready to undersolve to camera three, undersolve to camera three. Ready to roll B." And he was just the most orchestral director I ever worked with.
Yep.
He later went on to become a really well-known NBA director. And so Lonnie had a saying. So this is going back to 1985. And Lonnie had a saying that sticks with me 40 years later. I have shared it with clients. I try to use it in my own life. My kids will be able to tell you it. And the quote is simply, "I was looking for a job when I found this one."
Hmm.
And it meant so much to me because it meant quit worrying about
Yeah.
bosses and everything. Just do what you're here to do and it will all
Yeah.
work out. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't, you're going to go do something else. Right now, our youngest daughter, who's 27, she is one of the people who, because of the cuts to universities, September 30th, her job is being eliminated. Her grant
Wow.
is not getting renewed. So she's been on for the last, she's known about it for a couple of months. She's been on the job hunt.
Yeah.
And yesterday she called us and she said, so I've got this offer, but I've also got another offer that I'm waiting on. And there's this other one that I'd really like to go and have a job there. And I said, look, just pick one. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if it doesn't work out, and if she discovered, you had a great job, but somebody else made a decision that you have
Yeah.
that job.
Exactly. Yep.
So
Yep.
if you go somewhere and it doesn't work, go somewhere else. And I think that mindset of I was looking for a job when I found this one is just
Yeah.
something that's always stuck and resonated with me.
And what I love about that is there's a message in presence with that. If kind of just being and kind of again, every situation has its roses and it has its turds, like you said, I think the part there that kind of in the end is that there's this presence and then this ability to know. There's a saying that says it's never the wrong time to do the right thing or never the wrong time to choose your final destiny, your next steps. You get to choose at any one time. I love this job. Like even as in entrepreneurial, we can continue to serve this client or we can stop. We can continue, but when you're there, serve. When you're there, be. Yeah. I love it.
You know, as you're well aware, Brad, I did a keynote called four or five generations in the workplace. I changed it after the first year because we added another. If we go back, Warren Buffett's still working and Harrison Ford's still working, and they're that generation way back there. I'm a boomer. You're probably a millennial. Then we go Gen X, Y, Z. Now Gen Alpha's coming into the workforce. And if I think back, I don't know that I would have had the courage to enlist in the military 2 days after,
Mm,
like my dad did.
hmm.
My
Yeah.
oldest brother was going to be drafted into Vietnam, so he enlisted in the army, hoping he would go to Vietnam, and he didn't go to
Yeah.
Vietnam. And I'm glad.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have had the courage to do it. I missed it. I didn't have to register through all that because I was born
Yeah.
in 60 and it was over by the time I was of age. So as I've studied the generations and as I've given the talk and as I've talked to our own kids and their friends, I think the most important thing that I would want people to remember who are younger is none of us have the answers. I mean,
Yeah.
if we had the answers, I'd be living in Naples, Florida. We just kind of go one day at a time. Yeah, we
Right?
push away the things we didn't do well. We remember the things we did well, and we try to learn from it. But all the people who I think it's very true of any, oh, that generation, the older's always
Yeah.
pushed down. I just wish people would go, they'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You and I didn't have to worry about AI. My kids are going to have to worry about what it does, and they'll
Yeah.
figure it out. And,
Yeah.
and so, again, I was looking for a job when I found this one.
I love that. And you I love what you talk about generations. One of the things I love to share with people, there's a recording and everybody you can search this out. It's called If I Were the Devil, and it's by Paul Harvey. And
Um,
it's a great one now. Yeah, right? Exactly.
yeah.
So this thing is you go through and you listen to this. And if I don't say who it's by usually in the first place, but I want people to be able to search it. But when you listen to this, you're
Mhm.
listening to this, you're like, oh yeah. Like I think this was this come out last week or last month? And it
Yeah.
was 1969.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of there's there's things that recur and challenges that show up and they have a little different look to them. They have a little different thing. And then I always look in like issues I see so often, especially political issues. There's this pendulum that swings and it gets a little too far and a little too much in one direction and then it comes back this other direction. Then it gets a little too far that direction. And it's funny, the older we get, the more you get to see the pendulums that have swung multiple times in the past, and whether it be politically to the right and to the left, whether it be to freedoms of this and freedoms of that. And it's so like it's almost humorous to see that we get so worked up, like this is the thing, and you look generationally, it'll be, we'll see what happens, and I love that because it reminds me of the story of I think it's a Chinese proverb, I believe, but of the farmer. And they talk about the farmer says, "Oh, it rains a lot," and he says, "Oh, isn't that great for you?" And he says, "We'll see." And then he said, then they have a son, and he says, "Oh, that's great for you," and he says, "We'll see." And then the son grows up, and he's doing something, and he breaks his leg, and they're, "Oh, that's so bad for you. We'll see." Then the army comes by to pick up conscribes, and he's injured, so he can't go. Isn't that so great? Oh, we'll have to see. And it's funny how dynamic things change all the time, and you don't know. You can't write the future necessarily with the story you have right now, and you might as well just be present with it.
Wow, you
So,
really took me back in time to my dad driving us to school when I was a kid, and we'd listen to Paul Harvey on WBAP radio, and we'd always hear, and now you know the rest
rest.
of the story. And that is a great audio piece that he did. You mentioned Pendulum there. It's funny because one of the better books I read is called Pendulum by an author named
Mm,
Roy H. Williams, and he talks about the 80-degree arc. So it's 80-year arc, 80 years this way, 40
yeah,
years is a down point, 40 more years, and then it turns the other way. So every 80 years, if you will. And he
resets.
shows throughout history in his thesis how all this fits together. So it's really good.
Oh, so cool. Like, yeah, and it's just, and you see it. You can actually see the things where you can see the momentum picking up to something. And then all of a sudden people are kind of like, yeah, that's too much. And then it starts coming back and yeah. But yeah, and I think just it's funny. So actually, if anybody's looking, so Paul Harvey, I have much because share that quite a bit. But you can actually catch the rest of the story now on like Facebook Reels or something like that. So I love it. There's something about that voice hearing the rest of the story. Like it just there's soothingness to it, isn't there? And but yeah, I think that in the ability for us to, I love that like as you present the generations and understanding that we see this in politics and we see this in so many other differences that as we go what connects us? Do you want, health for your family? Yes. Do you want, love? Do you want to, like, all these things that we go, yeah, we want those things. Our only issue is we're trying to decide how we get to them. And there's different pathways and different ideas. And like most any location we want to get to in life, there's more than one location or more than one path, right? And trying to get to that. So,
And for all you
oh,
youngins out there, let's close with a history lesson. When I started working for Don McGuire, he lived in Charlotte and I lived in Fort Worth. Every Monday, I would drive from Fort Worth to Dallas to the Southwest Conference office to pick up the statistics from the previous week's football game. In fact, it's how I met my wife. And
well,
so,
very cool.
yeah, true. And so I would drive. Well, then a few years later, we got a fax machine. So they would fax them to me. Now, I was ending television as we got email and they could email me to me.
Yeah.
Well, I was in a television truck where we had 1 inch videotape. We had guys in the back who would have this little control and they'd back up the video to show a replay. I was in a production truck recently and I didn't
Oh,
recognize it.
oh
I
yeah.
wouldn't know what to do. So many
Yep.
more cameras, so many more things. I wouldn't know where to look. It would overwhelm me.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't think that at my fingertips would be the more power than the Apollo 11 had, which
I
I saw
know.
do its moon thing, right? And so
Yep.
I think those who are concerned about what's next just need to keep in perspective that we always figure it out and it tends to always boost everyone. So
Yep.
that's my
Yep.
hope.
Yep, I agree with that. And what a message for us to move forward with. David, thank you so much for just your humor, your just your authenticity and your transparency, and you're willing to share your experiences so that other business owners out there can use that, connect, relate, and just, and be more present. So I want to thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having
Awesome.
me.
Yeah, Greatness Garagers, you got an absolute fire one today. So enjoy it, and we will see you on the next episode. Have a great one. Remember, action is what makes this information all worth it. If you need help figuring out what that action is, go to callwithbrad.com and we'll get some clarity and help you figure out what that should be.